Welcome back, Aspire Leaders. I'm so excited to bring you another bonus episode from one of my favorite events of the year. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina for the NCMLE Moving the Middle Forward Conference. And as you can hear in the background, the energy was incredible. And we were surrounded by hundreds of passionate middle-level educators who really wanted to get more strategies and become better at their craft. So today we've got three amazing speakers that we're going to talk to that were a part of this event. But before we dive in, I wanted to thank our sponsor for this bonus series, New Horizons Global. I'm honored to be a part of this amazing team of educational speakers. And if your school, district, conference, or organization is looking for professional development that makes a real impact from day one, head over to newhorizonseducation.net and click on educational speakers. You're going to love what you find there in regards to topics and the amazing people that are there to provide the content. Now, in this episode, I'm bringing three powerhouse conversations straight from the conference floor. First, I sit down with Katie Powell. She's an education speaker who's been around middle schoolers for a very long time. We talk about her presentation, her books, and some strategies in regards to student engagement. Then we talk to the energetic Ronell Blackman, who's an incredible speaker, who's working all over this country in a lot of different formats. And so we talk about the work that he is doing in the world of education and outside of it. And then to round out the episode, we've got Charles Williams, who's a dynamic voice. He's been a former guest of Aspire to Lead, and he is a brilliant leader, author, and speaker, and we're going to talk about how he's making a real difference in schools across the country. So these conversations were amazing to be in person for. I love this event, NCMLE. I'll make sure all the information for our guests are in the show notes for you. I want you to make sure that you're connecting with these fantastic folks. And with that, let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. All right, we're back on Aspire Lead on location at the NCMLE conference, and I have someone that I've been connected to. It seems like a very long time, but I've never actually had on a podcast, and we were laughing because it was like, I don't know why I've never had Katie Powell on the podcast. She's an amazing author, speaker, educator, and it's just been such an enjoyable time to get to know you, and then also just to be in the same space. Yeah. So first off, thank you for being here.
I appreciate that. Likewise.
And so just so you know, we're teasing this out as Katie's going to join me. We'll do a full episode talking about her work, her amazing books that she's been over here signing for folks. And so it's just been a pleasure to, again, get to learn more about you, about the work that you're doing. But let's dive into that. So you've been presenting. I would love for you just to share out here in North Carolina what you've been presenting on.
Yeah, so both of my sessions resonate with each other. I presented on lack of motivation, a behavior problem.
Yep.
And so we looked at the relationship between motivation and engagement and the science, the psychology of motivation, lack of motivation, and what factors we have agency over when we're designing learning experiences and structures in our classrooms, how we can actually mitigate the barriers that students perceive that are actually feeding this work resistance. And one of the biggest things I'm hearing as far as like classroom management, discipline, student behavior right now is task avoidance.
Sure.
Just getting kids to pick up pencils and get started. And although it's a big and daunting problem, the good news is there are actually things we can do to fight that sense of inertia, get the ball rolling. And so today's presentation was based on my book, Frustration Busters, which is a classroom management book, but the teacher lens of it, that we honor the experience of frustration of educators, that when our own amygdala lights up, our prefrontal cortex is going to static, and we might know good strategies that we're not able to access because we're finding ourselves frustrated, managing minor classroom management infractions in the middle of class. We wound up having a really nice opportunity. In 50 minutes together, you aren't going to solve the world's problems, but some attendees sharing some of the things that have been working in their classrooms and the opportunity to learn from each other in that space. One of the really great ideas that someone shared was that based on the work of Leader and Me, they have classroom jobs that students fill out applications for, need to have recommendations from other teachers to be able to apply. They can be fired if they aren't meeting the expectations. And the opportunity for students to run things like answering your phone with a script that helps them know know, how you speak to an adult on the other end,
Sure.
taking attendance for you, passing out books, making sure people are prepared for class. That's all mental load stuff that can go off a teacher's plate then. And it's empowering students. And I think there's kind of a missing piece in a lot of our conversation is how are we empowering students to have more agency and voice in their experience, but then also the fact that our modern students aren't particularly good at those things when we give them the opportunities. So we need to be growing and developing these skills. And what a beautiful way to do that in a classroom. So we kind of camped out there and talked strategies together like that. It was beautiful.
Nice.
Really great opportunity.
So I've seen your books like a million times on social media. It's very noticeable. Like as far as your branding, you do a great job.
Thank you.
So you have 2 books. Yeah. So do you want to share just a little bit about both and the difference between each one?
Yeah. So Boredom Busters was the first. Highly applicable, easy to implement engagement strategies. Works for any grade level, any subject area. All rooted in really strong science of learning and neuroscience, all of that. But the book itself isn't a research treatise on engagement. Instead, it's a book you literally could pull it off yourself, flip it open to a page and go, we're doing this today.
Sure.
And the genesis of most of those strategies was that my first full-time teaching position was as a middle school sped educator. I was a mid-year hire because the teacher before me was being fired. Oh, no. And we don't fire middle school special education teachers. So some unfortunate things have been happening in that space. And I inherited students that did not see themselves as learners. So if the way my classroom looked and felt like a traditional classroom, those walls were completely up before I did anything with content.
Sure.
So I started getting playful with teaching and learning, moving desks out of the way and doing things on the floor and let's gamify things, because then it didn't look and feel like school and those barriers could come down and it was working really well. But teaching my way with my teaching style and personality works for me because it's my teaching style and personality. Yep. The genesis of those strategies was actually taking what works for me and in co-teaching relationships with some of my colleagues over the years, realizing that when we shifted from a tenure system to a teacher evaluation system, one day the definition of good teacher was you're a good teacher because you've been teaching a long time. Yeah. The next day, the definition of a good teacher is because a rubric says 3/4 or more of students are actively engaged in a work that is relevant and meaningful for them at all times. That's a hard target to hit. And we did not wrap professional development around a lot of those educators for whom the evaluation of how good they are at their job dramatically changed. Sure. And I watched a colleague who was a good teacher one day because she'd been teaching 35 years. Be a teacher who needs improvement the next day because the name of the game changed. Yep. And in thinking about how to support my colleagues in that time, realized that we have a zone of proximal development just like our students do. Yep. And if the target is here, how do we backtrack to what someone is comfortable and proficient with and just take one step out of that comfort zone toward that target? And that's what the Boredom Busters do. If we start with a worksheet, you're going to use that worksheet anyway. It's part of your adopted curriculum. You're not having to deviate from curriculum to do it. But what if we just deployed it differently? Sure. What if instead of handing it out, students are turning it into paper airplanes and flying them around the room? So we've got playful pedagogy that minimizes those barriers to engagement and participation from students, but it's safe and accessible for educators. And when they start to gain efficacy with that, what does it look like to take that one step further? Awesome. So that's what that book is full of. The Frustration Busters is specifically looking at the teacher experience of classroom management and highly applicable, again, like take and use strategies intended to not just meet student needs, but also honor our experience in those exchanges with students. Because if our amygdala is lit way up and our prefrontal cortex has gone dark, we're not showing up the way we need to in those spaces. And we're discouraged, we're frustrated, we feel a lack of efficacy, and we're leaving the profession. Sure. So we need to be taking good care of ourselves and each other if we're going to keep this thing afloat.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like there's a lot of folks that are in line with everything that you're saying. I know our work has a lot of crossover too. Yeah. And so I'm super excited to have you back on the podcast to talk more in depth about everything that you're speaking on, especially on the book side of things. So Katie, in regards to this conference, is this the first time you've been here or have you been here many times?
Multiple years. Yeah.
I've also seen the theme. So why is it that you keep coming back to NCMLE?
Well, this conference does something very special. And I was telling David James, conference director, this a moment ago. I'm on the road a lot. I travel a third of the year. I'm at a number of conferences, and our state affiliates do a lovely job honoring and meeting the needs of their states. They curate these wonderful in-person and year-long learning opportunities for their members. But the North Carolina conference has something special with relationship. The things they do that foster opportunities to play, like the trivia night and the mixer, the fact that they, a nonprofit can't pay a massive honorarium to bring big names in, but big names keep coming back to this conference because there's community. And, when conference directors take the time to build in space for you to network and connect with other people, and like a connection like we're having here. We've known each other online how long, and we've never met in person. I have this experience every year with, oh my gosh, I have followed you from the days of Twitter chats, like back in the day. And now we're actually connecting as human beings. That happens every year. And so I think that's what's special about this event. If you look at the caliber of sessions people had the opportunity to attend over these couple of days together, these were amazing sessions with high caliber presenters brought in because relationship matters.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So it's been great to connect with you, see you in person. You're a real human being. It's crazy that we get to meet each other online and then in person. So super honored to share the space with you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you.
Of course, for folks who are maybe learning about your work for the first time, how can they connect or go to a website to learn more about your work?
I'm on Instagram, Teach Beyond the Desk with underscores in between. I'm on Twitter as Beyond the Desk with underscores in between. Those are the primary places to find me. And I just aged myself by still calling it Twitter.
That's right. I still call it Twitter myself.
X. I represent AMLE, so our website, amle.org. It is actually, while we're recording this, it's in March, so it's Middle Level Education Month. So we have a lot of highlighted ways for people to get involved in the world of middle school education too.
Very cool. So I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes so you can connect with Katie. And then, of course, we'll have you back on Aspired Lead, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper. Super excited for that conversation. So thank you so much for joining me for this bonus episode.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Aspired Leaders, I am so excited because I have a very good friend, someone that I've been connected to not too long. What has it been, about a year?
Yeah, about a year.
But Ronell Blackman is amazing. He does all kinds of things. Typically, he does MC, but he also does keynotes and speaks. Now, it's interesting because you're here really to support us with New Horizons. So we just share a little bit about why you're at this conference in addition to what you do in your day job.
Absolutely. Well, so the main focus for me to be at the conference is to support the team. Right. I'm all about building community. That's what I've done in many different arenas. So being able to come here, see not only the team in action, but also to be as a supportive fly on the wall, learn different things, different techniques, but then also just see the folks that are experienced in here. It's very rare that you get a chance to see others do what you do, right? So it's cool to see, that interaction, to see people's heads nod, to, just really grow and develop.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you to you because Ronnel has been in everyone's session, taking photographs, giving feedback, both positive and giving us some things to think about. And I love because as a speaker, we typically don't get an opportunity to get that true feedback, especially someone that's in the business. So I know our team at New Horizons is so appreciative of having you here. But in addition, I wanted you to share a little bit about when you keynote, what it is that you speak on, because this guy right here is dynamic. And can I just give a quick story of how dynamic this person is that he literally arrived in the ballroom for our keynote speaker, Kim Strobel, which I mentioned earlier with David James. Kim is dancing and inviting people on with music. I give Ronnel a hug and he's like, let's go. Now, for anyone that's listening, this is not my area of expertise or comfort level. However, somehow I ended up on stage with this guy dancing and doing conga lines and doing all kinds of stuff with the amazing Kim. So first off, thank you for your influence.
Come on.
But two, I would love for you to share out how you're innovating, how you're getting people to do different things in education, and of course the topic that you speak on.
I'm excited to be here, and what I work on is not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. My presentation is on presence, and I feel like in order to grow, in order to develop, in order to have a great community, you have to be present wherever you are. Soon as I showed up, I'm like, well, this is a perfect opportunity for us to be present, right?
We were present, front and center.
Yes. And, it allowed for everyone to relax.
Yeah.
It allows for everyone to see you as a person.
Yep.
Right. And not just this figure on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what I speak about is, being relatable. I run marathons. I'm working in the community through health and fitness, working with so many different people just to help them move the needle forward and recognizing that it's just taking small steps that will allow for you to overcome distractions, to build consistency, and to ultimately build confidence in your everyday activities.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited because we're going to have Ronnel on for an episode later on so we can get the full story. Yes, I'm so excited. So this has been a long time waiting to have you on the show, but we'll do an extended, 30 minutes, although me and him can talk for a very long time.
We
This whole conference I've been hanging out with Ronnel. So you're an amazing speaker, person. You have a huge heart, and I'm so excited not only to see the work that you're doing in education, but then also to have you back on the show for Aspire to Lead. So thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. Education is very, very important.
Yes.
I mean, it matters. And the more excitement that you can bring to education, you recognize that it is the difference.
Yes, it really is.
Right?
Yep.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And I look forward to that opportunity.
Yes.
To not only speak to you, but also the audience. Let's go.
Appreciate it. Aspire Leaders, I have a familiar face as someone that's been on the Aspire to Lead podcast before. Charles Williams is an amazing person in the Illinois space, but you've come all the way down to Charlotte. So welcome first, but also it's great to see you in person. I haven't actually met you
first time.
Yeah. Although we've been connected for years and part of the podcast network a long time ago, and you're just doing continuous work in this space. And I just want to know about your presentations and what you were presenting on, because I know you're always engaging whenever you're talking.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So I had two sessions. One was I really built out this framework called sustainable leadership.
Yes.
Spending decades, well, not decades, over a decade. I'm not that old, but spending over a decade in school leadership.
Yeah.
I watched people burn out, get tired, and I kept trying to figure out, we're always reactive.
Yep.
So how can we be proactive? And I really built out a framework around clarity, capacity, and care. Yep. I know we're on the same level on those things, but it's just trying to figure out how do we move in a space. And I think the hardest thing is it's so different.
Yep.
And so whenever I talk about it, people are like, what are you talking about? When you say we have limited capacity, I can't tell people no. Right. And I'm like, no, but you have to tell people no. Right. And it's a very uncomfortable space. So it's always interesting when I do that session, watching school leaders like, no, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But I went on that journey and it changed everything. And then the second one was about belonging. And it's a session I've been doing for years now. But what I love now, it is transformed into something, because there were two models that I used to use. But there was always something like it felt like it was missing. So what I did is I took those two models, merged them together into one, created my own new framework with that. But it really puts a lot of the ownership on the work of us in our classrooms, for example. Like if we want a student to feel like they belong, we can't just say, well, like belong. Right. Like we have to create the conditions to allow that student to feel like they belong. Same thing with, school leaders or whatever spaces you're in. If you're in that, we call it the dominant culture, right? If you're in that space, then it's up to you to create a space for them to belong. Now, they may choose not to, but it is up to you to create that space. And it has made a world of a difference, I think, when people are like, okay, now I know how to navigate that. So we do tools and things like how you actually make that happen.
Yeah. As far as the conference goes, we're obviously at NCMLE, and you've been to so many conferences. You've been a speaker for quite some time. So as far as the events, what are your thoughts being here in North Carolina?
So this is one of my favorite conferences.
Nice.
This is my third year being here as a featured speaker.
Very cool.
I think what's powerful is that when the first time I came here, it didn't feel like a small conference. I mean, when I look around and see all of these speakers, I mean, my very first year, I was hanging out with Alsheimer. Right? Like he was keynoting, right? I was surrounded by all of these speakers, and I was like, this is incredible. And so I think David has done a great job of bringing some of the country's most powerful and influential speakers into a space and delivering content. So, I mean, if I lived and taught in North Carolina, I would make a priority to be here every single year. It's just, it's incredible. And despite the fact that there are so many of us in this space, I don't feel like a number.
No,
like,
not at all.
I mean, David, as well as the conference itself, has done a great job of bringing us into a space where we feel appreciated. it is one that I prioritize every year. I'm already marking it for my calendar for next year.
Yeah. So David was on here earlier talking about today he's going to be launching out the new theme for next year, and they're already planning, which is incredible. And so hopefully I'll be back next year with you, and we can just continue this trend. And I love having the podcast here, and of course meeting phenomenal people like yourself. So thank you so much for not only being here, but just all of the work that you do. I'm going to have in the show notes as usual. If you want to and you should connect with this awesome guy here, and make sure that you click on the links and connecting on his social media, and then finding out all the amazing work that Charles is doing. So thank you so much for being on Inspired. I
appreciate it.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.